Welcome to our program, Culture and Christianity. And tonight we are going to talk about dealing with the dead. And our guest speaker tonight, we have Mr. John N. Ng'ang'a. Thank you so much, Mr. John Ng'ang'a, for coming. Talking about the dead, Mr. John Ng'ang'a, what do African traditional religion believe about the dead?
It's good to discuss this topic because it's a major issue in Africa. In fact, people say if you really want to know a people's, a culture's belief system, you see it in the birth ceremonies. That's when you know what they believe. You see them in the marriage ceremonies. You also see it in the deaths, in the issues of the dead. And so you can tell by looking at the way the people are, what they do. For example, it's still happening, unfortunately, in Africa, even now. You will find an old man sick, and the sons are not looking after him the way he should. They don't take him to hospital, whatever. But as soon as he dies, the same people who could not even afford the time, the same people who could not raise the money, now the money flows. You must ask yourself, what would have made the son not sacrifice his time when the father was alive, and when he is dead? He is really complying, and you know they spend a lot of money. You could not buy him a suit, now you're buying him 100,000 shillings worth of a coffin. Now that activity tells you about our belief system. We believe that the dead are not really dead, they are part of the ceremony. Professor Beatty, in African Religions Philosophy's book, saying that we believe there are every party you have in Africa has three groups. The unborn, the born, and the dead. They are all participating. That's why in an average religious African home, whenever you do it, you are taking some wine, you must pour some on the ground so that the dead can also participate. If they are not happy, they could start creating trouble for you on earth because of you do not treat them well. And that's why you have to be very careful, so the belief goes. How you bury a coffin, you have to buy him a good coffin, you have to bury him facing a certain direction, and you must make sure that the body comes through the house to kind of say kwaheri. All of those are based on the African belief that the dead are not actually dead, they are still living. And because they are still living, they actually have power over you, and you have no right of reply. There's nothing you as a living being you can do to affect them. But then they have things they can do to affect you in your life. So if you do not treat your parents well, now they can mess you up. So, and that's why you need to understand the African belief about the death is a very different thing from necessarily the Bible system. So what are we saying? The African believes that when you die, you do not die, you still hover around. You are still somewhere in the vicinity. In fact, the Luos say if you die before you are married and you are a mature girl, you become like a roaming spirit around the home, giving trouble to the living people. So you can see why they would desire you are married as quickly as possible. Because that's so we need to understand that belief system is what we believe in. That's why you will find some people will come after a bit of time, because they are still alive. They will come after a bit of time and do a ceremony around the grave, believing that what they do about the grave, the spirit that is still hovering around the grave will still have power and recognize the good you have actually done. So among the Kikuyus actually, they did not even bury people. They threw them in the bush so the hyenas would eat you. They started burying, maybe for Kikuyus, maybe less than 100 years when you have started burying the dead. But the idea is, as soon as you look like you're about to die, death was so feared that you would have to be to be thrown out to die properly out in the bush. Because I don't want me as a living person to be associated with the dead. Now that is a kind of a fear of the dead that's not biblical. But that's what we actually believed in. So, several things. Number one, the African believed that the dead are not really dead, they are still hovering around. Number two, they believe that the dead are still going to do certain things that are going to create problems for the living, and they believe they can be touched. And when you have a problem, you need to go to a witch doctor or a diviner, a modomogo, to help you to tell what the spirits of the dead are saying, so that you don't continue suffering. And thirdly, how you look after his grave, or the activities you do after the dead, are also important, and he actually recognizes.
Okay, talking about dealing with the dead, maybe you can comment on Deuteronomy 10 and tell us. Now,
Deuteronomy 10, verse 10, Deuteronomy 18, verse 10, 11, and 12 is a portion of scripture that handles this issue. Deuteronomy 18, from verse 10, 11, and 12. It says, the people of Canaan were destroyed because of the ceremonies and biblical ceremonies that they actually were carrying, one of which was consulting the dead. Now, and there's a long list, but one of it is consulting the dead. According to that passage of scripture, the way I can summarize it is that God required that when people die, you leave them dead. There is no activity allowed for you. For example, you not hear of any activity that was done by Isaac where Abraham was buried. There is no activity you see done by Jacob for where Isaac was buried. And there is no activity done by the Israelites in order to honor Jacob. It means the teaching of Deuteronomy is that you must let the dead remain dead. And God is very, very unhappy, totally unhappy with the people who are living and are still trying to relate with the dead. The spiritists and all the like-manner type of people who try to resurrect the dead and communicate with them. They are doing something Deuteronomy 18 has actually condemned. So the word is actually very, very clear at that point. You do not expect to have. Of course, creates problem, because a bit of some of the so-called Christian churches seem to behave like Africans. They kind of pray to somebody dead and ask the dead person to pray for them before Jesus. It's unscriptural. The Bible is clear. It's appointed unto men once to die, after that judgment. So there is no allowance where the dead can impact the living in any way. According to that portion of scripture, there is no communication between the dead and the living. So this being done even by some Christians, you know, even here about the laying of the cross on the grave of the dead, has Deuteronomy 18, we not know where it comes. Because once somebody is dead, they are actually dead. If you want to show respect to me, show it to me when I'm still alive. When I die, what you do with my body does not benefit me in any way. According to that portion of scripture, there is nothing you can do to my body that will affect me. Because the New Testament even put it in a very good language. To be absent in the body. When I become, because this body is not me. When I'm absent from my body, immediately I become present with the Lord. And what that means is that the body I have left is not me. You can cut it, you can bury it you can bury it, and I'm not encouraging you to do it, but you can bury it in a gunia, in a sack. You can throw it in the bush for hyenas to eat it, or maybe even thrown in the ocean. It doesn't matter what happens to my body. My spirit, the spirit of somebody born again, goes to be with Christ. To be absent in this body is immediately to be present with the Lord. And so you can see the New Testament and the Old Testament is communicating that the African culture that was trying to make us commune with the dead is something the Bible is clear. And it's saying that the reason why the Canaanites were destroyed is because they were not obeying the requirements of God in ensuring that the dead have no relationship with the living.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. John Ng'ang'a. This is Culture and Christianity, and tonight we are talking about dealing with the dead. We'll take a quick commercial break and be right back after this.